the co-host's duty.
Exactly. Sound effects.
All right. Well, I'm Nate.
And I'm Rach.
And this is Pew Pew time.
Pew pew.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Well, solid intro. Today we're covering episode 2 of Ahsoka, and if you just watch episode 1, you'll know that we overlapped a little bit.
I told you.
But we were just excited. Cut us a little slack.
You
Seriously.
were excited.
Back off.
I thought we were diving right into it. But anyway, let's continue.
Yeah. All right. So, no anecdotes this time. We're going to try to keep this to a reasonable length. And here in 2 hours at max, we'll be out of here.
Give or take.
Yeah. All right. So, the last episode, where did we leave off, Rach?
So the episode ended with, it appeared Ahsoka running up on Sabine having just gotten stabbed with a lightsaber by the murdered. We're in second episode. Dead. Everyone knows she's not murdered now.
Wow.
She got stabbed with the lightsaber. She's down for the count. The apprentice has taken off.
Shin Hati.
Shin Hati. What is it?
Hati.
Shin, whatever. Shin. Yeah. I'll just call her Shin.
Hati. I'm sure that's how her friends pronounce it.
Probably. I'm sure she has a lot of friends.
Anyway, they stole the map thing.
Yep. Her and the other HK dudes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, beginning of this episode then.
With them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They snuck up on her. The droids came after her, smashed up all of her cool stuff.
Correct.
Stole the map. And she just wasn't like ready to defend herself really. And so she took one out, but the other one got away. And, the Dark Jedi apprentice, who I found out through TikToks that I actually was using the right terminology, I think, because other people were calling them Dark Jedi. And
Dark
I was pretty
Jedi.
proud of myself.
Okay.
So
there you go. Good work.
Yeah. And again, very much in the same sense, my understanding is not so much that they follow the Sith philosophy, but they have fallen from, what the Jedi stand for, and they're not like, the light anymore. They're, not necessarily,
we talked about. Yeah. I mean, they're not for or against anyone but themselves, it's kind of just, yeah.
Right. So the episode starts out with, Ahsoka and Huyang. I always have a little trouble with that. And a medical droid hanging out in a hospital room with Sabine. It's actually kind of fun for me. Do you recognize the medical droid?
Recognize like it was from
the style of droid.
Yeah, from Luke.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Empire.
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back, after Luke has his run-in with the... we almost said wonton. What am I trying to say?
Oh, gosh, no.
I'm so ashamed. I was at such a high after my Dark Jedi comment. The big abominable snowman.
Stocks or pillory, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, no, so...
oh my gosh.
So she is, whatever, waking up, whatever, and she has another, like, it feels like a forced dream to me, something like that. Like she's having these
weird,
leaps awake.
Something.
Yeah. So there's a comment about her aptitude for the Force here in a little bit, but I don't want to cover that yet.
Right.
But the whole, the droid there was one of the medical droids that you see on Hoth. I think that was the first time we saw them, and he's taking care of Luke, who's in the back to tank after his Wampa attack. Not Wampa.
Oh my
that was
gosh,
understandable.
Finally.
So, no, you're pretty embarrassed of me, right?
I'm embarrassed of me.
Ashamed of me, I should
That's like
say.
an easy one. Yeah, I'm super embarrassed of you.
So anyway, she was run through with a lightsaber, but again, we're gonna just lean into the fact that like lightsabers don't kill people quite like they used to. But if you can get her back and get her into a back to tank quick enough, I'm sure that's doable.
Right.
So Ahsoka then finds out that the map has been opened, whatever, the key to the map has been unlocked by Sabine, and they stole it. And so she, like as much as she can, storms off to go take care of it. She's like, no, wait, but you need my help. And she's like, you've done enough.
Yeah.
A little bit. Just, I mean, not as snarky as I made it, but a little snarky.
It was intentionally snarky, and I think she deserved the snark. Sabine knew better.
Well, if you've seen the Clone Wars, you know that Ahsoka is capable of the snark. That's certainly a key thing that you learn about her. So then they show the Dark Jedi. They show Baylan, Skoll, and Shin Hati in this like weird like ruin, another planet. And he says something about he has his apprentice call Morgan and say, like, we found the reflex point on Cetos. I think that's what reflex point. I think that's what he said.
Yeah. And
he's set the metal sphere, the key, whatever, down on a stone like plinth, and it's just like, I don't know, it reacts a little bit or something, and so he's like, all right, call Morgan. And there was a we'll talk about that in a minute. Then it goes back to Sabine, or not Sabine, but Ahsoka wandering into Sabine's tower, which was Ezra's tower, but on Lothal. And she sees the Lothcat is lingering outside, not interested in being inside, which I didn't think about the first time I watched it, but the second time around, I was like, the Lothcat didn't even want to go inside. But yeah, do you wanna explain what happens in there?
Sure. Well, so Ahsoka goes in pretty quickly. Actually, the Lothcat then appears at the doorway, and Ahsoka I think she first discovers, she's just looking through Sabine's stuff a little bit. She discovers the message from Ezra. Pops that on for a second, and I think there's a moment, she recognizes Sabine's, connection still there. Obviously, it's always fresh in her mind. But then the HK, the assassin droid, pops down from above. She lops his head off. So then, and I think that's pretty much the extent of what we see in that moment. She grabs it and...
she carries the head off.
Yeah, we don't really know why yet, but obviously that becomes clear very soon. So, yeah.
Yeah, there are times... it's interesting because, like we like to think about robots as having all of their important, like, brain-esque stuff in their heads. You know what I mean? The memory and all that kind of stuff as humans are, but there's no reason it wouldn't be in their guts and stuff. But in the Clone Wars and that sort of thing, there were plenty of droids that, like, they took the head and they plugged it in, and, like, they had these general strategist droids and that sort of thing, whatever. So it's very much within canon that it would have information in its head. So I thought it was cool.
Supported. Yeah.
But yeah, so they go back. She goes back to whatever the capital city, I think, in Lothal, and they dig into it a little bit. And again, Sabine proves her worth, and this is again very much in line with who she was in Rebels and everything too. Right. Is that she's kind of a computers hacker, technology expert. So she plugs into it, and she's got like a time limit before the head explodes. Yeah. But yeah, she manages to track the origin point of this droid, where it came from, where it was built, something like that. It's a little unclear to me, but and do you remember where that was?
Well, Corellia, which
yes,
the initial reaction then is
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the initial reaction is they start questioning, well, Corellia is where, Morgan, there were a lot of operations, going on. And there's that concern immediately of like, I think there's the moment that Ahsoka is like talking to Hera, and she's like, oh, we shut all that down. And she's like, did you actually go check? I'm like, make sure that all of that is, taken care of. And I think Hera just had a moment of
there are a lot of interesting administrative duties that may have slipped through the cracks in the midst of all this, but we'll get into that too.
And you think the fall of the Empire is this massive, even when we get to Corellia, not to jump ahead, but that conversation of like, the people who are working here, the people who were working here before, because how are we supposed to like find new people.
Yeah, because that was like
90%
of the galaxy.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Well, here, quick nerd quiz. Do you know anything from the original trilogy that was relevant about Corellia?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because in watching the episode, I almost looked it up because I was like, why is Corellia standing out to me? And you're saying from the original series?
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple different things. I mean, it's not all the original series. It's some of the newer stuff that's been mentioned. But
well, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to pause for a second in case this needs to be cut out.
You have way too much faith in my interest in editing this. But go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's fine. But is Corellia, and again, I did not look this up. I should have just looked it up.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm the one.
In Andor, isn't Corellia where he like says he's from, like pretend says he's from, or am I wrong? Is that completely off base?
You could be right, but that's not the reference I'm thinking.
I know that's not. I would say that has nothing to do with the original series, but that's
possible.
Funny that like
it's possible.
That's what stood out to me. I cannot remember though from the original series.
Okay, well, don't sweat it. These are pretty. Okay. This is some pretty deep stuff. The Millennium Falcon was built on Corellia. It is a Corellian YT 1300 freighter.
Yes.
I think 1300. Okay. Again, I'll be ashamed.
That makes
if that's
sense.
Wrong.
The Corellian. Hearing the word Corellian reminds me of that.
Also, Han Solo is Corellian. He's from Corellia. And in the movie Solo, Star Wars story, I believe that they start out on Corellia.
Yeah, they do.
Because he's sort of, working with the Empire at that point. But anyway, so I was interested when they talked about Corellia. I was like, ooh, cool. We'll get to go see Corellia again and everything. And it was a short visit, but, interesting.
It's true.
So... they figure out that it's about Corellia, and there's this moment where, clearly Sabine wants to go along, and Hera's like, so what? Like, she needs you, and or whatever. Like whatever. You should go with her, and she's like, well, she doesn't want me to go. And she's like, yes, she does. Like, there's this sort of like. Sabine's not good at being an apprentice, and Ahsoka's not good at being a master to an apprentice. You know what I mean? Like, there's this sort of like they both kind of suck at this. But again, both of their training was left unfinished, so it's understandable.
Yeah,
but true. You had a note here too. What were you going to say?
Well, I do think you had mentioned Hera is still this kind of supportive person for Sabine, and this like, oh, Sabine, like, you did a good job. Like, she has this little moment of like, look what you did, Sabine, like, good for you, you should go with her. And it's kind of like, well, tell her that. And and it's like, well, but you did a good job trying to cover up the mess that you got yourself into. But I'm like, Sabine's an adult now, like, absolutely 100%. There should have been an apology in there somewhere. Like, I think of like person to person, not even like outside of the Star Wars story. I'm like, you took the map, which she deliberately said, hey, this is bigger than just us.
Explicitly
and Ezra. Like,
said,
you need to stay on the ship here. And she immediately snuck off with it to her own place, where she was fully exposed and had no protection and no help from anybody. And then lo and behold, it gets stolen. And suddenly it's like, oh, she doesn't trust me. Well, yeah, absolutely she doesn't. Like, she has every right not to trust you or want you with her, because even though you found out where this droid came from, that does very little to help you actually find this map that now the enemy has, and it's unlocked. Now I'm guessing they had the key anyway, or they knew how to unlock it, but still, if they didn't, they have it just free and ready to go. And that, to me, I'm like, Sabine didn't even say like, you were right, Ahsoka, like, I shouldn't have left with it, like, I'm sorry. It was kind of this like, oh, they have the map, and she's like, I know, like, oh, I know they have it,
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah.
So no, you're absolutely right. It was like when she ran off with the I don't know what to call it, the map or the key, the sphere itself, whatever. I'll just call it the sphere.
The sphere is the map, I think, because that is what opens up and shows the star map. I think what the key was like the floor in the imaging that Ahsoka, remember, like, she took like the record of the area.
It doesn't matter.
Key was anyway, but that's my feeling.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so when she took the sphere and ran off with it, I was like,
yeah,
way to be an idiot, Sabine. Like, it was just so, I don't know. So she's a little like rebellious and that sort of thing. But
sure.
I feel like, this is one of those things that filmmakers do occasionally when they want to show like the character grows or whatever. Like, you get to the end. I mean, they did this with Han Solo a little bit.
Sure.
Han Solo's arc from episode 4 to episode 6 is pretty good, right?
True.
He starts out as a smuggler who all he cares about is money. At the end of episode 4, he comes around quite a bit, and he comes back, and episode 5, he's like, he has to deal with dodging the bounty hunter stuff and everything, and he ends up with Boba Fett and back at Jabba's palace for Return of the Jedi. And then at the end of that, like by the end, he's like, he even like says like, you know what, to Leia, like, you know what, I won't get in the way, like you and Luke, whatever, he's becoming a more selfless person for the good of others. You know what I mean? It's like there's this like this sort of great end to a story arc, and they come around in episode 7 when The Force Awakens was made, and he's back to being his old like smuggler self, and it just felt stupid to me. He's left the woman and all these things. It was a step back so that they could show him going through that same character arc again in the span of a movie,
that's
right?
True.
Now the way they ended it,
he has the moment, right?
The way they ended it, I thought was great, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want Han Solo to die, but
right.
It was a great way to round out, that story arc and whatever. But all that is to say, it was as though they had to make Sabine, who was, more of an adult than some of the people on the team in Rebels, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And even at the end of that show, and this is like, some years later, and it just feels to me like this is a step back. Like, you're better than this, Sabine, whatever. And I think that's just that they're writing it so that she can kind of grow up and whatever.
Sure. I think you're right. I think the loss of Ezra, the loss of everybody, really probably took her a few steps back too. I mean, I think you could argue that of like, well, when your life falls apart, even like in, with Han Solo and his like having to restart his little growth or whatever, like when stuff falls apart, you kind of fall apart too, And so maybe there's some level of like, regression that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. It could just be, I mean, I still think that it's probably like, it's a pretty convenient way to explain it, but you're not wrong.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Even her like running away from the presentation episode, the first episode, that was like, come on, Sabine, be there, stand up, do what you gotta do, suck it up, you're an adult. It felt like
she
what
is
it reminded
also a
me
Mandalorian.
Of, well, true, but what it reminded me of was in Obi-Wan when Leia runs away. Like, it just made me feel like it was this little like child. Yeah, like running away.
When little baby Leia outruns like 10 like full grown adult like bounty hunters and Flea of all people.
Bounty hunters. Yeah, I know.
Remember
Good old Needles.
Like, is it there?
Oh,
that's your caught me off guard when I saw that. Oh man.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Needles.
Moving back. Yeah.
Back to Future reference. Again,
gotta appreciate that.
Nerd of many franchises. Yeah. So anyway, she runs away, and that was stupid. And then when she's confronted by her failure and, the consequences of it, which are consequences on everybody, not just on her,
sure.
There's not even an apology, but she does feel crappy about it, obviously.
You can tell.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She wants to go along. She still wants to help and everything. And what she does help, but
right. I mean,
to me, it wasn't like,
in the absence of what
they
had.
We're cool now. Yeah,
right.
Whatever. Right. So anyway, then it flashes over back to the planet Cetos. Mm-hmm. Cetos? I don't know. I think they say it two different ways because Hu Yang says it one way and Baylan says it another way. But yeah. But Morgan arrives with the Dark Jedi and they're all gathered together, and it's not just the Dark Jedi. She brings, actually I thought they were droids, but I don't think they're droids.
Yeah.
Let me check my notes here real quick.
When I watched it again,
I think she showed up with like human guards. Yeah. Or not like, human, but living guards. I was a little surprised.
Yeah.
Because even
it was interesting.
Even in that episode of The Mandalorian that she's in, she has like droids around, like these sort of soldier droids. But anyway, she goes over and she like fiddles with it, And again, did we cover that she is a descendant of the witches of Dathomir? We did talk about that in the last episode.
We talked about. In fact, did you notice the title of this episode?
What was it?
Toil and Trouble.
I should have noticed.
Toil and Trouble,
yeah,
which is like
witches.
a witch.
Yeah.
Witches. You know, I thought that was kind of. I'm like, oh, well, that's obviously
yeah.
a play on her.
Bubble, Toil and Trouble.
Toil and
That's
Trouble.
from Macbeth, I believe, right?
I think so.
Little Shakespeare in there for you. Get you nerds a little culture. Anyway, so she does her little thing, and the map just explodes outward. And again, it was just like on Treasure Planet, which was kind of funny.
That scene especially.
And I think, I think that there are a million little like Easter eggs throughout, and I saw in the map there were like Purgil symbols, like, in the same way that like on an old treasure map you'd see like, the Kraken or like giant whales or something. I just thought it was kind of cool. But I saw somebody said something about how there were loth wolves in it, because loth wolves were a big thing in the last like season or so of
they're
Rebels.
in that mural.
Yeah, well, they're in the mural, and they show up in the World Between Worlds, and they're sort of related to a lot, at least on Lothal, of these weird little like mystical force things. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were there, but I didn't spot them.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say they're kind of a symbol of that, like jumping through space and time, sort of, right? I mean, like, didn't the Loth Wolves kind of have some weird power of like movement appearing? Yeah. Anyway.
So they had. I mean, not in the same ways the Purgil do. The Purgil, like, it looks like they wind up and they shoot themselves,
Yeah.
But the Loth Wolves had this sort of mystical, like, people sort of fell asleep, and when they woke up, they were like way across the planet,
somewhere else.
And
like,
they also
galaxy,
open
right?
the hole
Weren't there times when
into
they were on different planets.
Not in Rebels anyway. Okay. But they do open the doorway, the gateway for Ezra to get into the temple, which at least the one end of the temple has the World Between Worlds, where you can see other places, and he hears voices from throughout Star Wars. Right. It was kind of cool. And
cool. I forgot about that.
It's something that we need to do a specific deep dive into sometime, the World Between Worlds and the theories that come with it, because there are some crazy fan theories that almost certainly aren't true, but would be kind of cool. So
if they weren't, I'm sure there's a lot to it.
Yeah, man, there's so much. And that's one of the things Filoni loves. My old buddy Dave, he loves lore, right? And so like he, more planets, more history, more all this stuff.
To weave that in as much as possible. Yeah. Which is cool. That's depth,
Yeah. So this is, again, I'm so excited about Baylan's character, and I'm just so heartbroken that the actor has passed away.
I know.
But anyway, she's explaining that this is the gateway to this other galaxy, and Baylan says the pathway to Peridia, I think is what he says. And whatever, he says,
he like reminisces that,
almost
for a moment.
Jedi,
it's almost this like
Jedi children talked about it. Yeah. A fondness for those times.
It was like this fun story that they used to talk about, and he said, how do you call it, like a myth or a legend or something, and then she goes, well, it's all true, like it's not a legend or whatever.
Like so many legends, it has a hint of truth to it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so apparently this is some famed connection to another galaxy, but like it's also unclear to me why they know that that's where he's going. Maybe something to do with the Purgil and knowing that that's where they go or something. I don't know, but to me that's not been made clear yet.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned
it could be
seeing the Purgil in the map, that it's like, well, that's a part of what they understand, is that is their like home galaxy or like their realm, where they make birth, something like that.
where they make birth. Have you not heard the stories? Anyway, so that was an interesting tidbit, and again, we keep getting these little glimpses, and there are more in this episode of Baylan's sort of fondness for the old days and the Jedi. And I don't know if Dave's just setting me up to have my heart broken, but I'm really hoping that this is him slowly coming around and remembering, the significance of what the Jedi used to be in,
right,
and the good that they could be in the galaxy and that sort of thing. So
right.
If it doesn't pan out, and if he doesn't turn to good and he dies at the end of this, as an evil dude, I'll be pretty disappointed. But either way, it adds a depth to his character that we haven't usually gotten from the villains. The sort of like, the Sith are always like, no, you're wrong. There's only evil in me, and all that matters is power and all that. Like, there's never any like, well, I guess there was a little with Count Dooku. He showed a fondness for the old days with Qui-Gon and some of that sort of thing when he was, sort of questioning Obi-Wan Kenobi. But anyway.
But Baylan is clearly more interested, intrigued, and appreciative of the Jedi in general. Less than like the Sith would be, I think. They're more, it's a competition against the Jedi, not,
right,
respect for.
Whatever. I mean, they're clearly enemies and all that. Yeah.
Right.
Now, of course, they did attack the New Republic ship and whatever. They just didn't care at all about the value of life, and they just killed a bunch of people.
True.
But who knows? Anyway, so at one point, Morgan says, "Thrawn calls to me across time and space," which is fascinating to say.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just, I saw somebody saying like that's just referencing the like, wormhole type technology or whatever it is that's going to take her there or whatever. Like, there's no way that he could reach out from this distance, but yet he does. And I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
As far as I know, he himself doesn't have any, telepathic powers or anything like that. As far as I know, he doesn't have any sensitivity to the Force. I was going to say understanding, but actually Thrawn's whole thing is understanding his enemy. Like that's one of his big, one of the big, pillars of how he conducts his business. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. What were you going to say about that?
Well, and I wasn't sure if this is at all worth discussing, but the concept of her specifically saying that he calls for me across space and time, or time and space, whatever. I had this moment of like, I wonder if that means where they are, passage of time has been different, whether they're, haven't aged at all, or maybe they've aged more. Maybe they're both a lot older. Maybe there's a weird, like, it almost made me question or wonder if it's like, if there's going to be something different we discover about them. Assuming obviously we'll see Thrawn at some point. The assumption is that Ezra is there too, somewhere, somehow. But, it made me just kind of question, maybe, like you said, it could just be that to reference this like wormhole idea, this concept of like, being able to break that barrier of space and time to be able to connect with somebody who is so far away, through her telepathy or whatever she has, whatever she can do. But I also was
the
like,
witch magic that has no rules.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the Jedi magic doesn't have much rules, but witch magic is like, we can do anything, because the last we saw the witches, all of their power came from, in Rebels, all of their power came from this like altar. So it's like you couldn't wander too far from the altar or whatever. You had to stay a certain distance from the altar or they couldn't get you. And now it's like, no. This is a planet that, whatever was like, this ancient temple was built by the witches. It was a stronghold of the Dathomir witches. And I was like, whatever.
I'm like, okay. Anyway, yeah.
So
we'll just see what that means eventually, but
it'll be interesting. I assume that it is like sort of hinting at something, but I doubt that we'll guess it,
Right. Who knows?
But yeah, there's this little bit of you can see Morgan. I don't know if she's suspicious or she's just trying to use Baylan. I don't know like what exactly she's doing, but she keeps asking him like, "What do you see?" Like, she doesn't have the same connection to the Force that he does. I don't know how much of a connection. Again, the witches have no rules, so if she has any connection, if she's like as one of their descendants, if she has some connection to the Force because of that, I don't know.
Right.
or if it's all like very just kind of like on the surface, like, oh yeah, like whatever. Anyway, yeah. So there's this, there are these questions about the Force that she asks him and everything. And it's always like he's kind of suspicious. And like there's this kind of, I wrote, there's a little trepidation between them, you know? And this, he's like, it feels like he's trying to decide, you know, like if he's really on this side and whatever, you know, again, as a mercenary, he's up for whoever pays the most, whatever. But
it's abundantly clear that he doesn't trust this lady at all. You know, I mean,
I feel like there's
he's in it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say he's in it for finding Thrawn, which you can tell. I mean, again, not to jump ahead, but he makes comment at the end of just like this idea that he seems like he wants to find Thrawn too. He's not just getting paid to get Thrawn back from Morgan. He's expecting.
Yeah.
Because his apprentice, Shin, asks the question at the end of the scene of like, you know, what happens when we find him? Yeah. And he goes, well, some people are going to be at war and some people are going to be this. And he's like, and, you know, she goes, like, and us? And he's like, well, power, you know, such as.
Yeah. Power such as you've never dreamed. Yeah.
Right. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good question. What is he implying by that? Is it just that now we'll work for the galactic empire as it rises from the ashes? You know what I mean? Like, is that what he's suggesting? Yeah. Is it something more to do with this gateway to this other galaxy? Like, I don't know, but it does seem a little weird. You know, and I don't know.
He has ulterior motives.
I want to like him. I want to like him so bad that I just feel like there's got to be some other thing that turns him around here or whatever.
Right. Well, and this is not to like, you know, rain on this parade, but I could see him having been a character that eventually would become good. I guess we don't know how many seasons of Ahsoka were planned, but obviously he passed away before they could. So there's a chance that was the ultimate plan. It may happen at the end of the season. That's what we're hoping for. It seems like 100% it will happen. I mean, they're setting up for it already. The way he appreciates, you know, reminisces, recalls, and the way he talks about the Jedi of the days of old. Like, there's some level of love for it or appreciation for it that he longs for, you know? So whether or not we'll see it now, or if it's like, well, we would have seen it, you know, who knows how they'll do it. Right. But anyway,
I don't know. You know, I'm a hopeful optimist type person in these sort of situations. I'd love to see him kind of come around. And again, I suspect his character will die off at the end of this season. You know, I assume that was the point to begin with. You know, the young apprentice might live on or something. That wouldn't surprise me.
Sure.
But I do. I suspect he'll probably die. You know, I don't. It might just be that they're sort of building that up in our minds so that we hope that it comes true. You know, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. But anyway, going back. Sorry, you mentioned he seemed kind of concerned, a little trepidatious about everything that Morgan was talking about. I want to go back to that you were talking about.
No. It's just the sort of way. What did he say? He said, like, you speak of dreams, vague and fractured hopes, and whatever, you know. And like she talks about fate. When Morgan talks
fate is
about
always
fate,
going to win. You know, yeah.
And it's just sort of interesting, these like philosophies sort of sorting themselves out between these people and whatever. Yeah. But it does feel like there's a sort of general suspicion between them a little bit, you know, just hints of it. Yeah. But then moving on, I don't know if this is the first time we've heard it, but they mentioned the name Marrok or Marrok, something like that. And he's the guy who's, I assume, a former Inquisitor.
Right.
He's got the Inquisitor lightsaber that spins and all that, right? Yeah. She, like, whatever, she said something about make sure that she said, have your apprentice go meet with Marrok to make sure that the final transport, whatever, goes smoothly or something like that. And I'm fascinated now by this character because I don't think we've heard him speak, which to me suggests that it might be a character that we know, or that's from,
I thought that too.
You know, I mean, it could just be an old character that was written out when Disney bought it that they're bringing in now. Who knows who it's going to be?
Well, I mean, he's wearing a mask too, for crying out loud. Like, it's as hidden as
some of the Inquisitors did.
Be.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think it's. I mean, it's intentional. You know,
it feels like they're setting us up for a reveal. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But anyway, he's an interesting character, and they send him, and then what's her name?
Shin.
Yeah, Shin Hati to Corellia to check on the final shipment or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so obviously that's where, you know, our good guys are going, you know, so it's building up this coming moment where they'll face off, and that I'm pretty excited about. But they mentioned something called the Eye of Sion, which we see like at the end of the episode too, which is super interesting, and I want to talk about that. Yeah, but we'll get there. Mm-hmm. And so you were asking, like, has he just been one of the Inquisitors? He looks most like one Inquisitor that I saw in it was Rebels. So there's this episode of Rebels where they it's the episode again. I should have said spoiler alert at the beginning of this, but I'm gonna spoil things here. It's the episode where Kanan gets his eyes lose their sight because of a dirty move by Darth Maul, who I guess is just Maul at this point. But it's this whole scene. They're under the crust of, I don't remember if it's the ancient Sith like homeworld. I can't remember if it's is it Moraband that they call it now? I can't remember. But it's like under the crust, and there's this ancient weapon there, and Maul's there, and there are like 3 Inquisitors there by the end. And Kanan and Ezra are there, and Ahsoka's. It's just this like huge party of people. At the very end, Darth Vader shows up too. It's like
that's right.
Everybody who's anybody is there, right?
Yeah.
In the Jedi Sith world. But one of those Inquisitors looks a little like this guy. He's got this sort of like, you know, repeated pattern mask thing. I kind of wonder if it's that guy, because I think the last we saw of him, because they like to fly around on these lightsabers, and I can't remember exactly how it works, but I kind of think he just gets like force pushed off a ledge and like, and like that's just kind of it. That's the last you see. I think. I could be wrong. Huh. Maybe they cut him in half or something. I don't know. But
it could be.
So it could be somebody like that.
Yeah.
But who knows? I would be more excited if it were...
Right.
Yeah. I'd be more excited if it were like some, you know, character that we weren't expecting to see. Like, that'd be kind of fun.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that would make it
I don't know who it'd be. But yeah, we'll see. So, yeah, okay. So let's skip ahead to Corellia, right? Mm-hmm. So Hera and Ahsoka meet up on Corellia. And immediately they have this like they're pushing back on them, right? Like the facility, the administrators of the facility are like, oh yeah, like I was just telling the general here, like, you know, that I can't remember what is she saying? Like he doesn't want to give her a tour. Like, oh, we're very busy.
He's like, I was just telling her we're very busy. There's a lot going on since everything, you know, and she's like, well, if you want, we could do this in a more formal way, you know. Yeah. Which really quickly, before we move on from this moment, I want to point out what Hera's arrived in and who we see. Yeah. Because that was really fun.
Yeah.
Because it was.
Do you want to bring it up? You want me to bring it up?
Well, I was just gonna say we see the Phantom too, and then we also see Chopper, right? In this, or maybe we don't see him yet, but we do see him shortly. One of the things I definitely recognized was it's the same voice. Yeah. I think it's the same voice of Chopper.
Do you know what the voice is?
No, I don't.
The voice is actually my buddy Dave Filoni.
Is it really? Did he do it in Rebels too? Oh, that's so funny. Yeah.
And I think I saw somebody comment on this. Yeah, I saw somebody comment on this, and I don't know if it's true or not, but now it's in my head, so it feels right. That they've like even cleared up the voice a little bit, so you could almost tell a couple of times what he's saying, you know? Because he was just saying it, you know, in a certain way, probably putting a little goofy voice on it. But they do all this digital stuff to make it sound droidy. But no, I was, you know, again, I'm a big nerd for that stuff, and I love the reunions and everything, and Chopper,
fun to see Chopper, yeah.
Hasn't changed much.
Right.
And looks really good. I thought he looked great. Looks very realistic, while still looking just like the cartoon character.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
felt very happy about how the Phantom 2 came out. It was so cool looking. I love it. Seeing that in more realistic rendering, and you see all the mechanical bits and the greeblies and stuff. Cool. Oh, it's so cool. I love it. So that was pretty sweet for me.
Wanted to mention that while we walked up on it, and then, you know, back to this guy, clearly some leader of this operation is talking with Hera, and Ahsoka walks up and
so he's pushing back on her, like he doesn't want to do this right now, whatever. But I don't know, there are a small handful of people in the galaxy that outrank Hera. You know what I mean? So it's it's like, who do you think you are to tell her no? It's like, so anyway, so they, they eventually they put pressure back, and he bends to their wishes, and they take a little ride through the facility, and he explains that all these engines are out of Star Destroyers and stuff. They're taking the Empire's old gear and they're turning it around and putting them in the new Republic ships, and whatever. And he says it with a little bit of a, hey, we're part of the team, whatever. And but you get the impression both from things he says and his sort of general sliminess that this isn't all about loyalty to the Republic, and what did I write? I said there's corruption and disloyalty in Corellia's shipyards, flimsy loyalty among the working class. And he makes sort of a good point. And there are always the last, since Disney bought it, I feel like there are these little bits of little jabs at capitalism and some of that kind of stuff,
Sure.
But his whole thing is I'm a businessman, you guys handle the politics and whatever. And there was a little of that with, the episode with Jack Black of Mandalorian season 3. But anyway,
well, and I think he makes the point, because they're are these, how can you be sure they're not still loyal to the Empire? And he's like, well, because they just care about who's paying them. They don't care about who they're working for. They just want the money. But I mean, that's an assumption. Nobody really is checking on these people, So
when we talked about
it all feels very,
it just feels risky. But you and I were saying that everybody worked for the Empire pretty much. You know what I mean? If you were a person who understood science and engineering and that sort of thing, it's oh, great, you work for the Empire. You know what I mean? It's these skilled labor positions, they needed them. And so there was no saying no to the Empire, so it's anyway. And a lot of these people, it seems, don't see the difference between the Empire and the New Republic. They're as long as I keep getting my paycheck, as long as I can feed my kids, whatever. Right.
Right.
So anyway, there's a point to be made there, but it also really just brings up the greater point that man, the First Order is brewing right under our noses. You know what I mean? All of these people that might not like things better this way, and might still be listening to the lies of the past and all that kind of stuff. Right. It was interesting.
It is. And it makes you understand better. It makes me understand better how the First Order could rise again. That it's not everybody was oppressed by the Empire. Some people just existed under the Empire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, this working class that literally, I mean, this is obviously this fake, world, or this fake, universe, but still this idea that there were people who just got up and did their job and went home. And it could be that how the Republic runs things, they don't really appreciate as much. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're loyal to the Empire, but they also may not care at all about the Republic or the New Republic or whatever is existing now. And so they might quickly shift gears if somebody offers more money or more power or more whatever to individuals, because nobody was really oh my gosh, we're so much freer now that we don't have the Empire. Well, no, we're still doing the same job. We're being asked to do the same stuff.
The truth is, I mean, there is more freedom now. I don't know. Here's something, and I don't know, I'm going to sound a little cynical now, but here's something that I think that Disney's been trying to do with the new Star Wars stuff, and probably with a lot of things, is create this moral ambiguity that
Sure.
good isn't always strictly good. Bad isn't always strictly bad. You know what I mean? Like there's room in the middle, you know, and a lot of people want that for movies right now. But to me, that's not what Star Wars is. And like the Rebellion and the New Republic should have been good, should have been the shining beacon, right?
Right.
And I get a little bugged at times by this stuff because it undoes all of the good that happened in the original trilogy, makes so much of it worthless. You know what I mean?
It's true.
It's like, no, it all just went back to the way it was. Like, that sucks, you know?
It does. It does.
But there's this sort of like, if these people didn't join, you know, the rebellion, was it because they don't care about changing things, or was it because they were afraid of the Empire? Like that would have been my guess. You know what I mean? It's like,
that's true.
I don't know. The Empire took advantage of people. It made slaves of people. So of course it's the worst system. But
true.
Anyway, so all that is to say,
but,
there's a level of people here who are not necessarily on board with the new management of the galaxy.
Correct.
Anyway, so it jumps back, and it's gosh, what was happening with Hera and Hu Yang? Oh, they're both. Oh, sorry, just in talking with Sabine.
The different times, yeah.
But convincing her, Hu Yang was basically just saying like, well, look, you know, you never asked to come back as her apprentice, and this and that kind of stuff, and like, kind of just pointing out truths and whatever, and she's kind of just like annoyed by him being right, you know.
Yeah.
And then she says something about how like, well, I was never very good with the Force, and he's like, that is true. And he says something like, you know, like, I trained all these Jedis, and your aptitude for the Force falls short of them all. And it was like, oof, that was a little harsh. Yeah. But I also was thinking about it, and I was like, maybe he just knows that she's a Mandalorian, and maybe he's just like challenging her to be better. Yeah. You know what I mean? And he knows that like
kind of
telling her that she sucks at this will make her try harder. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
so anyway,
more for her, that's more of a push than somebody who's like, oh, you're so great and you can be greater. It's more, she's going to appreciate more and maybe learn more from being challenged. More
practical criticism. But
right.
Yeah, and again, I love that like Hu Yang seems to still be the one carrying the torch for the Jedi optimism and everything. I think that's great.
Yeah,
at one point here, this is back on Corellia. They bounce around a lot for short little chunks, and I didn't realize it watching it, and I'm realizing it now looking at my notes. But Ahsoka mentions to the administrator on Corellia, she says, you know, like, you ever make any HK assassin droids? He's like,
she's asking what droids. Like, she's asking what droids are currently in, you know, use
in production.
He starts listing off all the droids that are still.
They're like load lifters and stuff. Yeah.
Right, and then she mentions, you know, the HK assassin, and he was like, absolutely not.
Like, oh no, not here or whatever.
No.
And before we move on from this, I wanted to mention. Maybe it's come up. I feel like it may have come up before in Star Wars stuff. The HK, whatever designation for droids and for assassin droids in particular. But my understanding, the first existence of HK assassin droids comes from Knights of the Old Republic, which are incredible games. The first one in particular is very, very good. I think I even lent it to you, and you never played it.
I did not.
It's probably sitting on a bookshelf.
We can play it.
Or
I'm
I should
sure
say,
it is because it's discs.
It's been anyway.
It's probably on Steam or GOG or something.
It is for sure. It is for sure. I own it on Steam, I think. So
the original.
Yeah.
That's the Old Republic.
I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I'll have you play it sometime, but it takes time. Anyway, there is one in particular, an HK. I want to say it's HK-47, but that might just be AK-47 sinking its way into my brain. But he's this droid that comes to work for you, and he is clearly evil, but he like joins your party, and he is so fascinating, so interesting, and hilarious. And it's like they were like brutal robots, and they're made, you know, like scary and whatever, you know, and whatever. But he fights with you and stuff, and like he says all this stuff. He calls humans like meat bags, and I don't know. He's just constantly talking about exterminating people and stuff. It's very funny. But every time I see that HK thing come up, it gets me excited. So anyway, apparently the droids that we've been seeing have been HK droids, and I think this is the first time they've mentioned that in the show. But I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then as they're talking, and Ahsoka says, "Any HK class?" and he goes, "Assassin droids? No way!" Like he's like, "That would be crazy." And then the one who spoils it all for them is a droid who's like, "Actually, I bumped into an HK class the other day." Like, you what?
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly everything starts to unravel from that moment. Yeah.
Right. And to what level this particular administrator knew it was happening, it's a little unclear.
It is. But it feels like he was a little in the dark, to be honest.
At the very least, he was negligent, right?
Right.
But, you know, at most, he was complicit in the whole thing. But he acts a little surprised when he hears about the HK droid.
Yeah.
But anyway,
He's
right
like,
about
why didn't you
then,
file a report? Like, his reaction doesn't feel like a false. It's like, why didn't you say something? Like, yeah.
And it was because the HK droid had a higher clearance than he did or whatever. So it was like, anyway, but like you said, it all unravels, and dudes pull blasters on them, and one of them goes, "For the Empire," and like, you know, Ahsoka very quickly takes him down, and And anyway, the protocol droid that narked on the HK unit says like, "Oh, I think he was flying away right there."
Right,
and
so
Ahsoka,
that ship there,
yeah. Ahsoka leaps out the window, and Hera runs off to get in the Phantom, and so Hera, you know, chasing it down, and as she gets closer, runs into what we call him Marrok, and
Marrok.
What's her name? Or not what's her name?
Shin.
It was sorry, it wasn't the girl. It was one of the HK droids.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah.
And so, you know, a lightsaber fight happens, and I don't know. It's good. I've been pretty happy with the lightsaber fighting in this. But I don't have any particular like, oh, and then this happened, whatever. But she takes down the HK droid, and as they're fighting, all of a sudden, like his like space wristwatch starts going off. It's like beep, beep,
and he
beep,
takes
beep,
off
beep.
running.
And he throws his lightsaber. At this point, he's gone full Inquisitor, both blades, and it's spinning, and he whips it at her, and it flies off like a boomerang past her.
Yeah.
And he goes running to jump on the shuttle that comes down with what's her name in it?
Shin is on
Shin
that.
Hati.
Then.
Yeah. And so he escapes that way, and the lightsaber, as it comes back, like he reaches out for it, and as it comes back, she just kind of like leans slightly as it like goes.
Yeah.
Man, I love that was one of my favorite parts in the show so far, because I love those little hints at like, it's the Force, like she's awesome, you know, she knows how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
I will say, I think it would have been cooler if she just been like, bzz, and like cut it in half in the middle.
I thought that too. Yeah. I'm like, as it's coming, she knows it's coming. She can sense it's coming. Yeah. So she leans out of the way. Why would you not like destroy it if you had the chance?
Yeah, but like, how cool would it be if from now on that guy couldn't do his full Inquisitor thing because he only had half a lightsaber? You know, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. But anyway, I also have another little. I learned, I'd forgotten. In our last episode, I recognized those the shuttle that they fly around in, but like I was like, I think it's different. Whatever. I looked it up, and the internet says it's I can't remember, but it's a designation of ship that was from the Clone Wars, and like the Senate used them, and the Jedi sometimes used them and everything. So I'm sure it came up in the Clone Wars. But it's a cool ship. Sense. But anyway, they get away. But simultaneously, Hera and the Phantom with Chopper are chasing the ship down.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is the transport ship.
Yep, that's carrying which we learned it's a like a hyperdrive core of something, right? From a super Star Destroyer or from a standard Star Destroyer. But it's that's what made the question first. We didn't talk about that, but in that room. He said SD, but I don't know if he said SSD, so I assume Star Destroyer.
I think he said SSD. I think you're right. It must be.
Super Star Destroyer. I
didn't.
So
it's a good catch. I didn't notice that one.
Yeah, and it makes me think.
Yeah, it's
and she was like, "Wait, that doesn't go to any Republic."
Yeah, we're not building anything that big.
And then it was classified.
So that was very interesting.
Not for me. Yeah, that's when.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's part of what sets it all off too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, so that's
so
what this
they're chasing it down
as it's flying away. Yeah.
Yeah. And Chopper displays a little bit of his war criminal heart. You're familiar with the whole war criminal thing, right? Have you heard about this?
From Chopper? I don't know if I am.
Yeah. The internet loves this. Loves him because he's like kind of like comically ruthless, kind of like they I mean, like, he is credited with like thousands, maybe tens of thousands of deaths, like of kills.
Really?
Like,
I don't think I
it's from
that,
like,
no.
stuff that he just chooses to like there's this moment where like they've got another like astromech droid that's like, it actually, like, they stole it from the Empire and they didn't know what to do with it and everything, and like it helps out in a pinch,
Rebels.
and it's
I
super
remember
cool
that,
to them and everything, and they're like, well, hey, welcome to the crew, man. And Chopper just like pushes him out of the ship, and he's like,
yeah,
falls, probably to his
death. You're
death.
saying the internet has gauged this just from Rebels, his presence in Rebels, or is
I mean,
this like
I don't know if it's
a
from
backstory,
that,
some
but
kind of like lore.
I don't know if there's a list. I don't know,
Okay.
but I think even Dave
That's
Filoni
funny.
has said that like he's responsible for a lot of death, Anyway, but there's this moment where they're chasing the ship, and he says,
she's
in
like,
his little
no, we
robot
can't do
voice, he
that.
says like, just shoot it down. And she's like, I can't just shoot it down. There's the city, it could crash in the city. And he's like, is that bad? And she's like, just find the tracker, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But like, he's a little monster, and again, that's one of the things I am fascinated by, and I like, but is also like bizarre, is the sort of sentience of droids in this, and right and wrong and all that kind of stuff, which is another thing I want to make a video about sometime. But anyway, moving on. They get a tracker on it, and so they know where it's going, and it's the Denab system, and it's going to be which is where Cetos is, right? That's what we learned, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, so there's this moment where I think Hera's kind of like, how could they still be loyal to the Empire? And Ahsoka says like, it's not loyalty, it's greed. And my little joke was, she's very anti-business. It's my Jim Gaffigan voice. He's anti-business.
Yeah, that was a very Jim Gaffigan voice. Good work.
Yeah. So anyway.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
Then it goes back to Lothal, and Sabine she's got her armor back on, and again, first time in the show that we've seen her wearing her armor, which, as we said in the last episode, it's like such a part of Mandalorian culture and such a part of her identity that like I just don't know why she didn't have it on all this time, and so it just speaks to like something really, like hard has happened in her life. Yeah. And I don't know if they're going to speak to it or not, but like something's gone down.
Well, something tells me that she thought accomplishing what Ezra called her to do was going to be easier. Like, that's what I think. I think she got into it thinking, I'm going to be able to get him back, or I'm going to be able to figure out what we're supposed to do. And then pretty quickly she realized she had no idea what to do, no ability to do what needed to be done, and lost faith in all of it, kind of. That's my guess, but we'll see.
I think there's again, we talked about this last time, but like there's this, who is her family? Like, she went through like some really difficult stuff, and like, her dad was imprisoned. Her mom had disowned her after her time working with the Empire. And then Baylan, when the weapon she was building for the Empire, which again she was supposed to be doing according to her family, the weapon was going to be turned on Mandalorians perhaps, and so she sabotaged it and like ran away, and like they hated her for it, so like she wasn't allowed to see her family anymore and all this, and so there was this whole arc about her kind of pulling her family back together and like rescuing her dad, and like her mom's forgiveness, and like the problem of the weapon she built resurfacing. Anyway, so like all of this, like the end of Rebels, she was like closer to her family than she'd been in a long time. So it's like, what happened to that connection to the other Mandalorians? And was it, like what I'm wondering is, was it like she had to walk away from that to be a Jedi? And like all of this was like she wanted to become a Jedi so she could help Ezra? And I don't know. It's all very tangled. Fascinating.
We'll just have to, and that's the thing. The hope is that they'll build the depth of what happened. I'm sure we'll hear more about it, because the way this episode wrapped up, she's back with Ahsoka. She's come back to this point, and I think we'll probably see, or at least experience some back and forth of what happened, you know? So.
Yeah. So she has this moment. She, can't remember. Oh, I think the hair is first, right?
We see her laying out. She lays out all of the pieces of her thing first.
Sorry.
And then...
I was asking you a question that I hadn't given the information to answer yet. But
okay.
At one point she touches the mural, but I think that's after the fact. She gets her armor all out and she does all that and everything. She I think it has to be, maybe it's not in the tower, but wherever it is, she gets down on her knees and she has this like really meditative moment, and she cuts her hair, very samurai style. Again, very Star Wars, samurai, Jedi, all that, which it mirrors very closely something that Kanan did right toward the end of Rebels, before he made the ultimate sacrifice. And anyway, it's it was kind of a neat moment, and it was, I think, like I'm shedding this off and I'm starting on this path. You know what I mean? So it was a landmark, you know, something to mark her change. So she did that. And then at some point, then there's the moment with Ahsoka, where Ahsoka has now reconsidered taking Sabine back when she's ready. And she gets onto her ship and like pushes a button, and Sabine was on hold basically.
That's right.
And her little hologram appears, and she goes, "I'm ready." I'm like, that's the whole conversation. I love that. That was pretty fun. That was very Sabine of her to say.
Yeah,
to do.
It was. I like that.
But yeah, then she goes to the painting, and she has her sweet little moment touching Ezra's face, which was almost affectionate. And the funny thing is, it's a
weird connection they have, because they talk brother sister, but there was always this question in my mind of more than that. So
he wanted more than that. That was the thing. There was this, like, for a long time he was like, "Hey, how you doing, Sabine?" You know, and like then he'd get knocked on the head with something because he and Zeb were wrestling around or something like that. Right. So it was like, especially at first, there was this like immature, like younger boy, older girl crush thing happening. Right. But as he became more of a like legit Jedi, I think he sort of set aside that, you know, as Jedi often do.
Well, and then his little message to her says something about, either he says something about, you know, I'm like, you've been like my family, you were like my sister. He says that in his little hollow message, whatever, that she has kept. So anyway, but she has affection.
It's a little hard to say.
Yeah, recognizes. Yeah,
it's a little hard to say what their relationship really would be, will be. Who knows? You know, but
yeah, that's true.
Certainly, there's a connection, like you said. Anyway, so they follow the tracker or whatever. They find out that where the ship went to and all that. And then the camera bounces to right over there, right? Is that when we see the Eye of Sion? The like giant ring?
They're talking about it, and we suddenly are seeing this transport make it to this weird ring. Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, this is the last piece. So we see they've got other hyperspace. They've already got other like cores.
Yeah, they've already got other engines mounted and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, when I first saw it, I hadn't made the connection. The first time we watched it, I hadn't made the connection at first, but I mean that this was the Eye of Sion that they mentioned earlier. Yeah. But I did say right off the bat, I was like, oh, it's a hyperspace ring. Like, it's exactly like a huge version of what the Jedi use in the prequels, like with the original Jedi Starfighter that didn't have a hyperdrive, whatever. Yeah, just kind of like load up into it and then take off at whatever. I thought it was interesting. And one of the first like huge technological secret things that wasn't just a giant planet that could kill other planets, you know. Right. So
they're
way to go, being a little
expanding there.
Unique. Yeah. But then the final little tidbit of this episode is there on whatever that planet's called.
Cetos.
What is it called?
Are they like down on the planet on Cetos?
Yeah, Cetos. Yeah, I aren't they? Yeah. And I think that's Baylan and Morgan and everything, or maybe no, they're on a ship. I'm sorry, they're on a ship. Maybe they're on the ring itself.
They're out in the. That's
because
true.
there's some weird droids around. The design is very strange. Again, I'm thinking like this is like, oh, this is Dathomir witch archaeology or architecture or something like that. I don't know, but
sure.
It was a little foreign looking and everything, and she is looking more and more like evil witchy, I think, as this goes on. So I don't know exactly if that's just like, I don't know, a side thing, or if like somehow this trip is going to make her more powerful. I don't know, but
we'll see, but
she says, like, you know, Ahsoka's appearance, you know, is troubling you, Baylan. And he says, yeah, her presence in the Force is elusive, yet her determination is vivid. She is coming. And I was like, that's a cool line. I love that.
Well, because
it said, to kill her would be a shame. There are so few Jedi left.
Yeah. I love that line. That was one that I mentioned. Well, I was just going to say, before that, so you know what had led to that was Shin was kind of like, you know, well, she said, you know, I sense, you know, that you're troubled, Baylan, whatever, at seeing Ahsoka or whatever.
Did Shin say that?
Yeah, I am. No, but Shin says, well, there's no way they could have tracked us. They don't know where we are. Like, Shin kind of has this moment of like, well, there's nothing to be worried about. Like, there's no way they could have. And he's kind of like, her presence in the Force is elusive, yet her determination is vivid. It's like he knows. Like, he knows that. Whether or not he knows there was a tracking device that made it through on this thing, you know, obviously he does not. But he definitely knows she's going to get there to them somehow, you know? So,
well, and
again, it's that
classic apprentice
of
stuff I'd say it's classic apprentice, like, behavior to, like, you know, underestimate the enemy, right? Like, she's like, absolutely. You know, she's never faced true Jedi, probably. You know what I mean? Like, she's never had to fight somebody like Ahsoka. I mean, I assume they haven't been hunting Jedi like the Inquisitors have, but maybe they have been. Right. I don't know. But
we're not given that impression. Again, he mentions it's mentioned mercenary a couple times. Like, I don't think they're out there hunting Jedi. They're just doing jobs for people. You know.
But again, if somebody had the money, you know, they might do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is again that last little note of like, is Baylan kind of like nostalgic? Does he kind of miss the days when they were noble? You know, I think that's interesting.
I mean, it feels like it, and we already know that he grew up as in the Jedi, you know, order. Yeah. You know, that is what his training is from, and we have no indication that he ever was with the Empire. They mentioned him kind of going missing, right? At one point. I can't remember what, because Hu Yang, I think, was talking about it. When he's talking about his lightsaber, he's like, I recognize that from a youngling or whatever at one point. And I feel like I remember, maybe, I don't know if you and I talked about it, or if, anyway, I think there was a moment of mention of him like going missing or something. I could be wrong. But, you know, there's no indication that he ever served the Empire that we know of at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a chance
I think
that he just...
the thing is, the way the Empire, you know, and Darth Vader in particular handled, you know, Force users was either, I mean, like, turn them into Inquisitors or kill them, pretty much, you know. The Emperor, I should say, made most of those calls. And there are, like, you know, there's the Force Unleashed games deal with, I don't know if it's canon, but a character called Starkiller, who was one of, he was Vader's secret apprentice until I think the Emperor found out and told him to kill his apprentice. So I never played those games, but that's my understanding of it. And there are some rumors that he might even be the one behind the Inquisitor mask, but who knows?
Interesting. Well, I will say, and you had mentioned this already, we've said it a couple times, that I really want Baylan to come around to the light again. Like, I really want him to recognize and start fighting for the right side, not just his own side, you know? And I'm really hopeful that he'll see the error of his ways before it's too late. So
I'm a sucker for a good beard, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also like, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it feels very Jedi-ish. The old sage,
he does.
you know,
I was saying
light
he feels like
beard.
a Jedi.
It's very Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he has a sensitivity to the Force that feels very Jedi-ish, you know, and the way he talks about, like, you know.
Right. Well, yeah, that respect for it. Like,
her presence in the Force is vague. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a wisdom that should really direct his actions differently. You know what I mean? So I really want to see it turn around, even if he has to die at the end of this. I'd really like to see it turn around. Yeah. So
agreed.
Anyway.
Well, it was a good episode.
Yeah. I'm excited for the next episode here in a couple of days. I don't know. There's so much, and this is part of the exciting part of this, is that, like, we know sort of what they're trying to head towards and everything, but, like, who knows what happens in the next episode? Are they gonna be in the, you know, like, are they gonna arrive there in the next episode, or
like, that's the thing too. Crazy. How long is this process? Is this whole thing taking us to Thrawn gonna be extensive, or is it gonna be well, we're there, like you said, next episode we're there, we're already seeing it all, and then the rest of the story is built off of that, you know? We'll see. But
yeah, well, and they get to this, let's say they get to this Cetos, and they realize what's happening. I mean, like, are they going to be like, all right, call the New Republic, get the fleet here, because we got to destroy this thing now? I mean, like, are we going to see a bunch of old characters, you know? Like, are we going to see, can't remember his name. He's the guy that represented the Rangers of the New Republic, really, in the last couple seasons, The Mandalorian. It doesn't matter.
I don't remember, but yeah.
But he's the guy that they see at the end in the, like, pilot's bar in the last, like, episode of the Mandalorian season 3. You know, he wants the droid head off the wall and everything.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's right.
So it could be an opportunity that we see some of these New Republic, you know, faces and everything. That could be kind of cool. We'll see.
Well, and one question I have, and just real quickly, do we know where this falls? Because we know Ahsoka overlaps with Mandalorian as far as, like, the era that we're in. Clearly, it doesn't seem like she's had interaction with Mando at this point yet, or do you think she has? Like, do you have any gauge or guess as to where, or is this written somewhere that we aren't aware of
yet? I assume she has. Okay. My understanding is, I mean, this certainly happens between the events of the Return of the Jedi and the Force Awakens, obviously, right? I think of the things that we have in that time frame, I think this is the latest, right?
Like,
so I think this what's happening right now.
Awakens.
I think it is, yeah. So I'm not saying that it's very close. I'm just saying that, like, I think this is newer than, like, the Mandalorians and their quest to retake Mandalore and all that. Like, I think that this is probably just after that. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's pretty close to chronologically real time. It's been a few months or a year or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that, but that's been my suspicion. And, you know, like, that would mean that she's met Baby Yoda, Grogu, and she's met Luke and everybody, and they've gone through that whole thing, you know, and she showed up there. But
well, and I wondered because Force Awakens, and this is me not knowing the newer ones as well, but don't we see Starkiller Base in the Force Awakens?
Yeah, that's like the whole Starkiller Base is. That's the main bad thing in the Force Awakens. Yeah.
Right, but my point is, isn't Morgan a part of all of this? And wouldn't we have
one of the things that we saw? What were you gonna say?
Go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say, wouldn't we maybe have been aware of that or something? Maybe not yet. I don't know.
What we know most recently is, again, in that last season of The Mandalorian, season 3 of The Mandalorian, there's like a council of darkness or something. I can't remember what they called themselves, but it was like, so you guys know you're evil. You guys know you're the bad guys, right? You know that you're the villains. It was just sort of funny to me, the way they named themselves. But they had a bunch of different projects going, right? So Moff Gideon had his he has a little secret clone operation happening in the Dark Troopers and all that. And somebody else talked about the mission to get Thrawn back. And he was even like, oh, well, where is Thrawn? Is he here? Is he coming back? I don't see him. Like, anyway, so like there are these sort of competing ideas for how to do this. So I assume Starkiller Base, maybe they talked about it. I don't remember, but I assume that that's sort of like Certainly, at least
project,
on the drawing board.
Sort of. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That makes sense. That's good enough for me. I just was curious where it fell in the timeline. If we were going to encounter Mando at all through this process, I'd be curious to.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it crossed over with Boba Fett pretty heavily, so it'd be interesting.
It's just that
but this feels like it's a different. It's a different energy. Ahsoka is kind of, at least at this point, it feels like it's different.
Well, it's more Jedi focused, right? Yeah. Right. So the thing is, like, Mando isn't super close with Ahsoka. They met once or twice. You know what I mean? True. So like, if she needs help, and she'll call Hera, and Hera will call in a bunch of X-wings and Y-wings and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes more sense to me. But I wouldn't be against a minimal crossover of some kind if it made sense. I love the Mandalorian stuff. So.
Well, and I think one thing really quickly with Ahsoka, I think we're also seeing it's not, now it could be different episode 1 and 2 or whatever, but there isn't like episodic resolution. So like, the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan was a little bit more continuous storyline, but those two specifically, it's like each episode was a standalone arc of crisis and resolution kind of. And anyway, but this is definitely more
it's really
story.
People even criticize the Mandalorian, especially the earlier stuff, but the later stuff is still doing some of that. The episodic thing that you're mentioning, it's like the A-Team. It's like so many shows from the 80s that were like, they wander into a new town and like somebody needs help, so like they'll give them help as long as they can get this.
Fix it. Exactly.
Right. So they got to make a little money to eat, but they also are there to help people, and they're the good guys. Right. So like, it's a lot of that. But the truth is, I could use a little of that. Like, I don't need everything to be the galaxies, whatever. But the Mandalorian still has always had this through line of something greater happening. In the first season, it was like, I got to get Grogu back, and I have to keep him safe, and I have to protect him. And little by little, it's become more like, I have to raise Grogu while also, rebuilding the Mandalorian lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting, but. Anyway, that was just one thought I had. I'm curious if we encounter that. So, we'll see.
Yeah. I your guess is as good as mine. It's a pretty open ended here. Other than we know it's going to involve Thrawn, and hopefully, Ezra, and maybe traveling across the galaxy. But whether that happens in the next episode or like at the end of the season, who the heck knows? So,
right. Yeah, we'll see.
Excited for it.
Yes. Likewise.
Anyway, so I think that's a wrap for, hopefully not the last season, but season 1, episode 2 of Ahsoka.
Yes. Perfect.
All right. Anything else?
Sounds good. That's it. I got it all out.
All right.
That's all I got.
Well, we'll see you soon. I'm Nate.
I'm Rach.
And this is Pew Pew Time. Nailed it again. Perfect.